Today on the Pro-Life Podcast, if recent events have taught us anything, it's our need for a pro-life worldview in our culture. We need to talk about this. Let's get started. Happy Thursday, pro-life family. Welcome to the table. John, good to see you, man.
Yeah.
Glad to have you here.
Happy to be here.
Well, okay, let's do our quick round of introductions. We get into topics because serious nature and...
For sure. Kim Schwartz, Texas Right to Life Director of Media and Communication.
Dr. John Seago. I'm the president of Texas Right to Life.
Brent Klingerman, IT Director. Okay, well, unless you've been living under a rock, the hot news is a 20-year-old kid climbed on top of a roof and took a shot at the president.
Yeah.
And we are very thankful that he was unsuccessful, but he did kill someone who was behind President Trump. And the loss of life is always tragic. This is senseless.
Yeah.
The media is everywhere. The CNN reported that Trump fell.
Yep.
Technically, I suppose, accurate. A little more complicated than that.
Just a bit.
But I think we've discussed quite a bit kind of before the program that this highlights the state of the value of life in our culture.
Yeah, definitely. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just one of those moments that kind of silences a lot of other conversations and a lot of other, I don't know, it's kind of like the fog is blown away in moments like these, where you just see the brokenness of the world, the deep darkness, and also, I mean, it really reveals the spiritual nature of this, is that how hopeless we really are. It's like we think we're elevated, we think we're, progressive, that we're, all this technology and these advancements and everything. And at the end of the day, it really is just the brokenness of sin and really just, I mean, evil. We're not protected from the evil of the world. And I think that's for a lot of my friends and a lot of people in my circles were just shocked by it. And it's just one of these, stark moments where you just realize how broken the world is and how need of redemption and the work of Christ that we really are. And so, yeah, definitely a sobering moment.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of those things that just like grips your heart as soon as you hear about it and you realize, again, how broken the world is and how much we need Jesus. And definitely a time for our spirit as Christians to come out even more, because even in this darkness, we still have hope and we still have this assurance that no matter what the storms are in life, that Christ is over all of them. And I think the biggest thing that came to my heart in seeing this is just like such a need for everyone to realize that no one is beyond Christ's saving grace. That that's something that just has penetrated our political discourse so much. At least as long as I've been alive, I would say. It's kind of like the nature of politics, I guess. It's always been like a little vicious, but, has elevated a lot with social media and having constant access to what your politicians actually say. And that can be pretty,
pros and cons.
Yeah. Definitely pros and cons. And so like the temperature had just elevated so much, and it's so easy to see the person who believes opposite of you as the enemy. And I think that can really be true in our movement too, because we do deal with the most evil issue of our society, that this is actual murder. But like nobody is beyond, Christ's grace, and everyone is called to love him. And so I think that it really highlights that truth. And I think that a lot of people are seeing that and hopefully, continue to take that to heart and not just be like one and done and like they forget about it in a few weeks or whatever.
Last week we were here preparing for the training of our new scholarship recipients. So they're actually here in the office this week getting trained, and I was putting together a couple of the presentations for them and sending out some of the materials. and whether it's talking about medical ethics or whether it's talking about other, kind of biotech issues, I had there multiple times is like, we need to look at these issues from the lens of the doctrine of the image of God. Like, if every human being is created in the image of God. And so then Saturday, whenever you and I are on the phone talking about our statement, it's like that is it. Like, how do we look through the lens? How do we see this through the lens of every human being is created in the image of God? And in our statement, we included that. And then the fact that even our political opponents, and that seems to be lost. And I know sometimes it's lost in the Capitol. And I remember in 2013, whenever we had the Wendy Davis attempted filibuster and trying to stop our bills, and the Capitol was filled with people that disagreed with us, very strongly, passionately disagreed with us, and sitting on the bench with them and with next to somebody who had an orange shirt on, I had a blue shirt on.
Yeah,
and
that was the divider.
The divider of which camp you're in.
Yeah.
And talking to them and actually hearing, like, what do you think this bill is? Why do you think this bill is bad? And having that conversation, it was a rare moment where it's like there is a person on the other side of that talking point. There is a real human being who has real fears, real concerns, real vision of what their future is going to look like. And it's just those moments are too rare that we kind of cut through this and see even our political opponents are created in the image of God. A couple of things that we talk about on the legislative side is, one thing that means is that I can't assume someone's motives, right? So I can disagree with your policy, I can disagree with your actions, I can even talk about what your vote or what your bill will do, the consequences, but I can't say you were trying to do X. In your heart, you really just have this animus towards our country.
Yeah.
You really just hate it. And it's hard because these are heavy things. These are important issues.
Yeah.
And yes, some of the policies like the Women's Health Protection Act that they're pushing at the federal level, it's a terrible bill.
It is, yes.
It would have awful consequences. It would really put even women's health in jeopardy across the country. However, the authors of that bill, we can't go and say that's what they want.
Yeah.
Right? We can, and so it's such a fine line, but that is just what it means to be a Christian in the public square, Christians who are called to this kind of work.
Yeah.
And social media has definitely highlighted the rift there and the need for a pro-life influence in our culture, because boy, it's everywhere. The opinions, just in the circle of people I'm connected to online, are every place.
Yeah.
Conspiracy theories are aplenty. And I mean, we live in an age where conspiracy theories and reality get really blurred all the time, but everybody's got some kind of crazy opinion right now. And in some ways, this has been very galvanizing in driving the rift even a little further apart. And all I consistently see is, even from my Christian circles, many of them that I have, that the need for a pro-life worldview is desperate.
Right.
Yeah.
We can't stop for trying to influence our culture in a pro-life direction. The value of life is just, in most people's view, it's expendable now. It's tragic. Like, there's a kid who crawled on a roof and took a shot and had a very swift and permanent response and got shot off into eternity with whatever state he was in. And there's no undo button for that.
Yeah.
And, is it weird that my brain went, man, that kid is in his eternal state, whatever that may be.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And I think, like, what you're saying just reminds me of the gospel when Jesus is saying, like, these really kind of, like, direct words of, like, he who loves his life will lose it, and he who hates his life will gain it forever. And it's kind of, like, pretty shocking to hear God say, like, hate your life. And, that's not really, like, kind of the message that how people would interpret that is not that way. But I think what it's showing is, like, what we're most invested in. Yes, it's, like, saving and promoting life here on earth, but what we're more invested in is people's eternal lives. And because they're made in the image of God, they're made for the glory of God. And, that's what we want. And that's what every human being is called to. And whenever we lose that as a society, like you're saying, it's not just this individual case by case that I think, the pro-choice argument loses of like, oh, well, you do what you want to do. You do what's best for you. We realize that this has a ripple effect, that if we say this one life is expendable, then this life and this life and this life and this life are all expendable. And that's how you end up with a society that doesn't care if you try to murder another person, whether that's inside the womb or outside the womb. We want that person to be here. We know that person is loved by God and that they're made to glorify God.
I think that the opposite direction is kind of works as well. So it's yes, if you start devaluing life here, then you're kind of saying there are more classes, there are more different types of different people in different situations that we don't have to protect. But then on the positive side, there's also a continuum of, like we saw in the early church, is because of their commitment, because of their love, then we started seeing orphans, abandoned children have value, and the early church accepting children who were left out to die in the weather being saved. We have the kind of proto orphanages starting, the proto hospitals from this Christian conviction that yes, every human has a value, even if they are sick, even if they are disabled, even if they are neglected by society. And so, yes, the devaluing, but then the revaluing, going back. And I just think of that picture of the early church. They were crazy. They were the extremists. They were the ones that were saying there are whole populations of people that the rest of culture is abandoning, and they committed to them. And so I think there's a kind of a momentum to these ideas, whether it's on the negative side or on the positive side.
Yeah, I actually just saw a quote. I think it was from C.S. Lewis. He was describing how Christ came to share his life kind of as like a good contagion, where once we accept his grace into our hearts, then it just has this really powerful, like infectious nature to it that you can't help but be captivated by it. And so that's, like what you're saying, that's what society really needs, is to just grasp on to that hope. And like, obviously we can do it. The world has been in a lot of crazy places throughout history. And so, it always seems like this is the craziest time that human history has ever experienced. But who knows? There's been a lot of really crazy times that the human race has survived, and so we just gotta keep kind of going back to the rock.
Yeah.
I do want to take a moment to acknowledge the families of the other wounded and the other person who was fatally injured. We're praying for those families and for the wounded. It's a senseless tragedy, and there's some things there's no undo button, and our prayers are with them. We pray for the recovery of those who were injured and the peace for those who have lost loved ones. Okay, so we also need to talk about the Republican convention is happening. There's some information there, and Trump picked a VP. How do we all feel about this? We're going to discuss it after this break. Do you have a cell phone? Do you have pro-life values? Do you like saving money? Well, Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider, and they've partnered with Texas Right to Life. So if you'll go to patriotmobile.com/Texas Right to Life or call 972-PATRIOT, 972-PATRIOT, and use the checkout code TRTL, they'll give you a free month of service. So make the switch today, have your money support causes you believe in, and save and get a whole free month. Make the switch right now. What are you doing still watching this? Make the switch right now.
This just in. Democrat leaders convinced Biden he already stepped down yesterday. Meanwhile, the party whose abortion position is endorsed by North Korea, Harvey Weinstein, and the Church of Satan says we're on the right side of history. If you want to meet the guy behind hilarious headlines like these, come to our 27th annual Life Gala in Houston on September 28th, featuring CEO of the Babylon Bee, Seth Dillon. Supporting Texas Right to Life at the Life Gala is a great way to make an impact and give hope to moms and babies in need. Join us in Houston as we honor God for all that He's done this year. But seats are filling up fast, so make sure you click the link in our description to get your tickets today. We hope to see you on September 28th.
Welcome back, friends. We hope to see you in September at the Life Gala. Seth Dillon is our keynote. Yes. I'm such a Babylon Bee fanboy, and I'm very excited about this.
We were exchanging our favorite headlines from, like, the last couple of years, with our issue being front and center, and they're amazing.
Oh,
so, like, we're going to have fun highlighting him coming to Life Gala just by reminding people of some of the great stuff.
I think making fun of like one about like Satan being very upset about the overturn of Roe v. Wade.
There's that one. There was like poking fun at Carrie Lake.
Oh,
she decided she wants to lose again, but this time being pro-abortion. I mean, it's just like they've got a deep archive, so we'll have to get some highlights.
They do. Okay. So, again, no shortage of fodder for the bee. The Republican National Convention is happening now. They're nearly done, I suppose.
Yep.
And there's some platform things that are going on that we're not enthused about.
Yeah, so I mean, this kind of obviously is getting overshadowed by the importance of, what happened this weekend with President Trump and the assassination attempt, and kind of Republicans in a moment where they are rallying, right? Where they are just, thankful for his health, thankful that he's very strong and that he's as committed. And it seems like more people are now more and more committed to see the importance of this race. So in the middle of that, though, there is a conversation about the platform. And the platform that they have adopted is a serious downgrade from what we've had in the past from the Republican National Committee. So the RNC used to have a very robust platform that every 4 years would actually get more robust, more pro-life, as different things were added to it about defunding or about this issue, or, but they're actually taking a step back from that with a very minimal statement. It's still pro-life. It's still a pro-life platform, but it really kind of matches Trump's approach of, we just want the states to take this issue up. So it says that, the right to life is protected in the 14th Amendment, and so states can protect that life. And then it says we oppose late-term abortions, and then it says, we support a bunch of other things.
Yeah, we support mothers and policies that advance prenatal care, access to birth control, and IVF.
Yeah. So there you had a very robust pro-life statement. Now you have what I think we were saying is like very minimal, very like it's the bare minimum.
It's kind of doing the least. It's doing the least.
They are still the pro-life. When we look at the parties, they are still the pro-life party.
Right.
But it is like the bare minimum to get to pass the grade, right? Yeah. To get a passing grade on this. So very disappointing. There were some great leaders, Tony Perkins, David Barton. There were some guys on the platform committee that were, they saw the change. They were very outspoken about it. Texas Right to Life, we put our support behind their effort to get a minority report out the door. And, because of everything in the weekend, that this issue is, this kind of momentum has kind of fizzled away. So we're not going to have a full conversation about it. But it's something that Republicans, we need to come back to.
Yeah.
Is as a party, because we are the only pro-life party, it's let's embrace that. Let's kind of, nobody's going to read this platform and think you're pro-abortion, right?
Yeah.
No, there's no going to be independents that are pro-abortion, and now all of a sudden, because you limited your language, they're going to switch. It's just, I don't know. I think it's absurd, but it's still pro-life. We still know which party is the only party for pro-lifers. It is disappointing, though.
In 51 years, there's really only one party that's made any progress on our issue.
Right.
So, still the pro-life party.
There's nowhere for us to go, but, it's like we could have done better. Let's be honest about that.
Yeah. For sure. And I think, there's definitely a misdiagnosis that the Republican, political consultants that kind of are behind this are pushing, and that's, this idea, whenever... I'm going to ding us in the algorithm now by mentioning COVID, but, whenever it was people who, did you die of COVID or did you die with COVID? This was a point that Matt Walsh has brought up. Seth Dillon, I watched a video of his preparing for gala stuff. And he was making this distinction too of like, did you die with COVID or of COVID? And so all of these election losses that Republican consultants were freaking out about, and they're misdiagnosing it, saying like, oh, well, it's because you're pro-life. And it's like, well, this candidate didn't really even make abortion a big like fixture of their campaign. And so, but you're blaming that loss on the abortion issue.
Yeah.
So it's more of like they died with COVID, like they lost and like coincidentally were pro-life, but they didn't lose because they were pro-life.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's not surprising to see the Republican Party get spooked and try to like run off from this issue. Like we've seen this 1,000 times before. This isn't the final, like, you know, only shot ever at improve, like changing the Republican Party platform. We're going to be back here in 4 years.
Yeah.
You
True.
know.
Well, I think the coverage that the Bee had was like Republican leaders afraid of a landslide victory
Yes.
decided to water down their platform. I mean, it was like, you know, you see Biden's favorability, some of his in his own party was turning on him after the terrible debate performance. You know, they were getting celebrities coming out, writing op-eds against him. Like it was hit after hit after hit. Obviously, Trump's, you know, I mean, amazing show of leadership and courage in this assassination attempt, and the way that he rallied and didn't, you know, that he supported people and wanted people to know he was okay. And just the way he handled all of that, like great favorability.
Yeah.
More people are supporting him than ever. And now we, like,
Right.
this is the moment that we back away from a core, you know, Republican tenet. It's very frustrating, but you know, like you said, this is obviously, we're not going anywhere. We're going to keep working with the party, trying to make it stronger than ever. And at the end of the day, in November, it's the same stark choice, right? It's not as if that is kind of lessened any.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see what happens in the Democrat Party, but
Yeah.
You're right.
True.
You're right. There may be some more
let's
twists.
see. So we record, and then there's a little bit of time, and this comes out, and maybe there'll be a twist in that. Who knows?
Oh,
but
dear.
I mean, I
Let's
heard
hope.
some donors were threatening to withhold about $90 million if they don't find a new candidate. So
Yeah.
who knows? We'll see.
We'll make another episode about that when that happens.
Boy,
Goodness.
yeah.
Yeah, but kind of some of the other big news that came out of the convention this week was Trump's VP nomination, or VP pick is J.D. Vance, the senator from Ohio. New kid on the block for sure, in terms of like national politics. And it's really just a mixed bag on his position. Like he had solid pro-life convictions up until about, so he's from Ohio. And then if you remember last November, Ohio voted to enshrine abortion in its state constitution, got a big loss there. And so that's when he kind of started changing his tune. Like before then, he was, you know, solid, not supporting exceptions. He really just had all of the pro-life convictions down. I mean, he's Catholic.
His quotes from 21 are very solid.
Yeah.
In the context of our heartbeat bill.
Yeah.
When our
Do you
heartbeat bill.
remember? Do you have what
His
it was?
exact quote on the campaign trail in 21, Vance defended the lack of exceptions in Texas abortion ban, known as SB8. It's not whether a woman should be forced to bring a child to term. It's whether a child should be allowed to live, even though the circumstances of that child's birth are somehow inconvenient or a problem to society. That's some strong language there.
Yeah.
And we jump forward, and he's into reasonable exceptions, and it feels like he's kind of accepted the state of Ohio's constitutional amendment. And
I mean, that's kind of where it started was after, like, he campaigned for or against the Ohio Amendment for the pro-life side in Ohio. And then, you know, there was a brutal loss there, and he started saying that exceptions are like a political reality, that they're not good, but we need them. And then over the last few months, as kind of he gained more like national momentum, he started to, you know, even go further, drift away further from that solid conviction where he was like against exceptions wholeheartedly, and then kind of saying like, oh, well, they're not good, but they're a political reality. And now saying like, yeah, like I support exceptions, and just like straight up endorsing them. And even a few weeks ago, he was on a media interview, and the reporter asked him, do you support the availability of mifepristone, the abortion pill that was at the center of that Supreme Court case? And he said, yes, I think mifepristone should be available, all of this stuff. And so there's definitely been a shift in his position. I hope that he will come back.
That's a far cry from it's whether a child should be allowed to live.
Yeah. So
yeah, and
really
I think, I mean, we've obviously saw, Trump in listening to his political consultants that were saying this is the right direction to go. I mean, this is the guy that gave us the overturn of Roe v. Wade.
Yeah.
I mean,
right.
and brags about it, but then tries to back into it. And so I just think it's, yes, this is the tone right now. This is kind of what is in the water of the political leaders, is they think they have to find it. Mm-hmm. But the moral reality doesn't change. And I think they can't keep this line up for too long.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's like, okay, I'm against abortion except for chemical abortion. It's just like, like there's really not a place to stay in that position. So, yes, it sounds like he's kind of been trying to find a more politically acceptable kind of position on this, like we've seen with some other leaders. But, pro-lifers are going to be around them, going to continue to push on them, and not going to be this is not an acceptable policy position.
Yeah, definitely.
And so once we get to the actual governing, if they get to the White House, then, all of the staff and what we'll be pushing our congressional leaders to do and what we'll be pushing the Republicans to do is obviously going to be thoroughly pro-life. Not just with these kind of halfway statements.
Yeah, definitely. There is a stark contrast. As much as there is a contrast between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, there is just as much contrast between Kamala Harris and J.D. Vance.
So that will be an interesting thing that we have to look forward to if they do have a vice president debate.
Yeah.
I mean, to see him, he's a younger guy.
Yeah.
It should be interesting.
He appeals to that Midwest, kind of support that Trump's had in the last couple of years. It's definitely something to watch. Obviously, we'll keep a close eye on how he handles the pro-life issue and recommending states, because it's saying, okay, it's a state's issue, but then you got to say, well, what do you want the states to do?
Yeah.
Like Ohio. Do you want Ohio to keep fighting?
Right. You got to pay the piper at some point here.
So, yeah. The 14th Amendment was about dealing with a terrible human rights issue.
Yeah.
So, now you want this, but then the state should make laws. Well, okay.
Irony.
We'll keep doing it. We'll keep pushing them, asking them, and to clarify their position on this. And of course, the pro-life movement in all of the different states, is not letting up. Even our friends in Ohio, who are kind of dealing with the aftermath of that constitutional amendment, they're good friends of our organization, and they're still, figuring out how do we educate the public, how do we engage the public, how do we, keep momentum going to save lives. So, definitely a couple of steps forward, but we still have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, you were definitely right when you talked about at the convention a couple of weeks ago that education is our superpower. That is our power move.
Yeah.
Right? Like, once we really start talking about the actual science, you can't really beat it.
No.
Yeah. Everything we do, political, on college campuses, everything we do has to be based in education, in bringing up the truth. And so, more work to be done on that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Cool.
Well, friends, it's definitely been a week of highlighting the state of our culture and that we need Jesus. Mm-hmm. So, friends, if you would like to have some conversations with your friends and neighbors about pro-life views, your personal convictions, and let's be honest, everybody's need for a Savior, feel free to do that. All the links below. Thanks for watching. Like, share. We love you. See you in 2 weeks.